Here we are once again back in Worthington Farms. Remember that time we built a car park in episode 1? Such distant memories. Just a quick update about Patreon. After talking to a few of you in Discord, I have decided that Silver and Gold patrons will now have early access a week before the official release of my videos. You heard that right, you can watch my videos a whole week early. Quite overwhelming. Just look for the Patreon link in the description. Today we'll be finishing the initial layout of the park. That's right folks, there's no more room at the inn. Worthington Farms is nearly complete. A couple of weeks ago I asked you to come up with the name for our Huss enterprise. The name I went with was Whiz Bang by C Wild, and I created a snazzy sign to match using some Tiki Cheeky branding and basic shapes. C Wild has now taken on the role of a mechanic in Worthington Farms. 2 of you suggested the name Worthington Wheel, however I felt this name is better suited to our next attraction. One iconic ride the park is missing is a good old-fashioned Ferris wheel, a place for our guests to look over the park in sheer awe. Thanks to artsy gamer TCGS and Danny Bannon for unintentionally naming this ride. I started off by removing a section of the train track to connect our new plaza to the existing path. I then reconnected the track, sinking it into the ground, and laid down some hazard strips. With the plaza complete, I built the queue and exit paths for the big wheel. Next came everyone's favourite pastime, fencing. I secured the ride area as well as the park perimeter. As there's nothing too interesting outside of the park, I blocked sightlines with extensive foliage. I placed down some simple pathing for some benches before covering it up with some TMTK cobblestone pieces. I imagine this area maybe being one of the oldest of the park, so used materials to match. It's likely at the point the farm started converting into a theme park that a Ferris wheel would have been one of the initial rides to be brought in. I covered up the clipping terrain with bushes before adding some further fencing. I added a whole bunch of bushes to create a large hedgerow for the edge of the park. They always say you should end on a high note. That's why I chose the Lunar Autos, a vintage car track ride. As a child, this was the one ride I was obsessed with at Pleasurewood Hills. That feeling of truly believing you had control of the vehicle is one that I'm sure many people remember, and a piece of nostalgia to add to Worthington Farms. I created a basic layout and then extended the track out for a maintenance shed and somewhere for the cars to sleep at night. Who doesn't love a tunnel? I built this out of painted wooden walls, tar-pitched roofing, and some beams and pillars for detail. I made the maintenance shed out of the same materials but added a concrete floor using Idros plaster wall pieces. I created our usual shutter using rails before making a start on the interior with some metal walkway railings. If you're wondering why I haven't made this custom fire exit into a blueprint by now, you're not the only one. Next, I went nuts with TMTK, adding a fire extinguisher, fire alarm push points, a couple of electrical cabinets, a first aid cupboard, and general workshop clutter. I then gave the building a trim and popped a roof on top. I created some access into the ride area for staff and then moved on to the station. Once again used the same materials here, just a slightly different style building. It dawned on me the other day that Worthington Farms has a significant lack of water, so I decided to add a lovely little pond. I filled a hole with water and then used some upside down bamboo as reeds. Where do I come up with this stuff? I'll tell you where. I steal it from other people. I popped down some lily pads before creating some rock work. I finished it off with some small bushes to blend the gaps. In case a child decides to go for a swim, I attached some life rings to the side of the shed. I then did a spot of light gardening. The grand centerpiece of your journey around this glorified garden is a lovely wooden trellis. I made it using pillars and beams. Surprise, surprise. I placed the beams by eye, so no, they're not even. But when you're travelling at the breakneck speed of 4 miles per hour, you'll never notice. I fenced off the train tracks and did some more landscaping. Being the fenceaholic I am, I caved into my addiction once again. There aren't too many bespoke ride signs in the park so far, so figured I'd go all out for our last one. I created a flower bed and built the sign itself using stone and plaster walls. Our vintage cars are of course missing a name, so make sure to comment your suggestions down below. Lastly, I placed some signage by the entrance. And just like that, Worthington Farms is complete. Well, almost. There's still a whole bunch of little details I'd like to add and generally tidy everything up, but we're very nearly there. To allow you time to come up with a name for our vintage cars and me time to finish off those final details, there will be no episode next week. But don't worry, I'll pop something else in its place. I'll see you in a couple of weeks for the final tour of Worthington Farms.